And I am thrilled beyond words to introduce our longtime friend, our stalwart ally, the brilliant historian, artist, and I could list his titles for a long time, but I'll just say Professor Jean Tinney is going to be one of our panelists. And Jean, if you join me on stage. And then, speaking of, talk about a longtime friend. I tell people that I worship at Nadine Patrice's feet because in the 15 years we have known her, we can say there is nobody who's a more potent advocate for the rights of all people to enjoy the blessings of nature. And she does it in such a way that in many times it compromises her own private enjoyment of her life, but she continues nevertheless. So, I mean, all hats off to you, Nadine. Professor Tinney. And I'd also like to introduce now Jermaine. Well, I learned about Jermaine last year when I was reading the West Side Gazette newspaper and saw this impassioned article about how the changes over in the Glades area was affecting the people. And, you know, nowhere else other than, you know, through Cynthia or Frank and I or other people that we know, nowhere else were we hearing these issues addressed. So when I found out about this young man, I was too thrilled. So welcome to our panel. And we're going to be addressing the issue of community organizing. So I'd like to throw it out to the panel. Why organize the community? Why?
I guess I'll start. I guess one reason why would be because the community is unorganized. And actually I say that semi-facetiously because we're actually a lot more organized than we think we are. That is in terms of sharing a lot of the same ideas, values, understandings of what we need to be doing, what needs to be done, our place in the universe, and so forth. But unlike the opposing forces that are creating a lot of the problems, a lot of the damage, a lot of what needs to be corrected, who are very well organized, we, although we share those understandings, tend to be almost too much in the grassroots mode, where we do not coordinate our activities sufficiently. And I think that's part of the answer to the question why. The other would be, well, to use two proverbs that I think guide us, serve us well and guide us well, in life as well as in the specific pursuit of environmental justice and all forms of social justice. There's one that says that it's better to light a lamp than to curse the darkness. You know, we can complain, we can certainly, with very little effort, make a complete catalog of all the things that are wrong. But what really needs to happen is that we take proactive, positive action to establish something that's new, something that's better, something that's more efficient. And this is very much in line with much of the, I would say rhetoric, but I'd also say that it's sincere and truthful. The statements coming from the Barack Obama's campaign and his administration, that his election and his administration is not about him, but indeed about us. It really is an invitation, a call, an obligation, a challenge, a blessing for us, regular citizens on the ground, seeing the reality every day, to engage ourselves in ways that provide solutions rather than problems. The second proverb would be, and this is always a good one to remember, that those who rode a rope don't have time to rock it. you know, people who are involved and engaged in positive action, you'll find don't have a whole lot of time to spend on just complaining about what's wrong. Yes. And the reverse of that is, and you heard some of the speakers this morning who exemplified that, really don't have much time to listen to criticism from others who are simply about complaining and not doing. So I would just throw that out as an opening and then let our other two speakers sort of address the why.
Yeah, well, I want to add to this why organizing is like in a community. Sometimes the people at the lower level, they know there's a problem, but they actually don't know how to organize themselves. So that's when a leader comes in to actually teach them how to get the knowledge and the information and know their rights, empower them. That it's not, they can't win once they have the information to go to the next level. So it's important to go to these communities, to grassroots communities when they know they want to do something, they know something is wrong, but they don't know what to do. That's when these organizations come in and get them going.
Well, I was going to defer to my elders, and I say that with all due respect, so it worked out perfectly. First, I like to quote an old African proverb that says, I'm a person because there are people. And I think that's a very good reason why we have to take into consideration, the need for community outreach and organization. And I often ask people, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, it says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. And I often ask people, what is a republic? And even though I feel like America is very much an empire, most people can't tell me what a republic is. And it's when a group of people or a political order that's based on people working freely for the same cause and the same goal, and the key there is people working together. So if we really want to be a part or consider ourselves members of a republic, then we need the people to be informed and organized. And one more thing I often ask people too, are they familiar with Codex Alimentarius, which is a program that the UN and the World Trade Organization plans to implement in America in December 31st, 2009. And most of them don't know it's going to affect the nutrients that we take in and the foods that we eat. And everybody needs to know about that. So I think that's very important.
Fascinating, thank you. And I'm interested in asking, how does each of you organize in your respective organizations? And would you tell us a little bit about your organizations and what your community organizing, what form it takes?
Since you're on this side, Gene.
Yes,
Sorry.
okay, we'll go. Yeah.
Go in order.
I'm glad you brought that up because we had a lot of good focus on the specific issues around Everglades restoration, but I think as we all listen to that, we all could relate that to many other causes, not only locally, but nationally and globally. In a semi-official way, I'm representing Virginia Key Beach Park Trust, which I think is a good example, a good lesson in how community organizing can take place. And the best way to explain that, it really wasn't something that a few people, had a plan, intelligent design for, but something that really did come about as a result of, you could almost say, the right confluence of historic factors. You'll remember that around 1998, 1999, a very significant event occurred in Miami, which was the discovery of the Miami Circle. Two old apartment buildings were being excavated, demolished to make room for what was going to be a twin tower condo. And it so happened that waterfront lands in Miami, when a project was going to be done, needed to undergo an archaeological survey. In making the survey, this fairly perfect circle, excuse me, of what our best guess were supposed to be post holes for a structure that might have stood some 2,000 years ago, when the destination was here, came to light. And with that, something very unusual for Miami took place, which was that a whole coalition came together around that crossed the gender lines, the generational lines, the ethnic lines, cultural lines, and so forth. Somehow, here was a city that had previously been so divided politically and socially that seemed to simply find resonance with the idea that this rather young city for the East Coast, compared to Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, Savannah, and the rest. Miami was only founded in 1896. That this young city would have something so old, something that actually dated to the time of Christ, that absolutely needed to be preserved. Once that struggle was won, and it was a struggle to get the county, the state, the city, and all other parties to see the light. Some of you would remember there were some idiotic proposals. Well, it could be cut up like a pizza and the slices moved to another location. Just craziness. But one sanity prevailed. Out of that, and I have to give specific credit to Dr. Greg Bush at University of Miami, who became aware that there was another project going on. There was a plan for what is the historic site of Virginia Key Beach to be leased out to private developers. The city of Miami, as usual, was in financial trouble. And this was supposed to provide income and so forth. And this plan was quietly moving through the pipeline in those kind of backdoor meetings that you heard about earlier. Frank Peterman was talking about transparency. And pretty much going toward fruition, thanks to Greg Bush, who made a few phone calls, one of them to me, one to Mrs. Enid Pinckney, who was, I think, the first African-American president of the Heritage Trust, who had to actually be in the leadership of the effort to save the circle, and to a few other people. I, in turn, contacted our community matriarch, Mrs. Athley Range, our publisher emeritus of the Miami Times, Garth Reeves, Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields at the Black Archives, thinking that if any one of those three, one or more, got behind this effort to save Virginia Key Beach from development, that we would have a fighting chance. Well, what ended up was something more than a fighting chance, and what happened was that several groups came together, groups that would not have met other than through the Miami Circle. So we had environmental activists, we had public park activists, we had historic preservationists, and we had members of the African American community, many of whom fit one or more of those previous categories, who all saw the need to save this 80-some acre site that was consecrated by history. Virginia Key Beach, as it turns out, was the colored beach during the era of segregation. Unlike other colored parks around the South, people who aren't even familiar with the South know that they were often not much better than vacant lots. They were, whereas white parks were fully developed and landscaped and beautiful. But Virginia Key Beach, like Miami itself, was sort of exceptional to that, in that segregation, for all of its evils, actually worked to the advantage of the black community. Overtown, particularly the colored town section right outside of downtown, was prosperous and thriving, and also politically powerful, in a position to negotiate with the powers that be what was demanded. And in 1945, the demand was made that there needs to be a bathing beach for the colored population. And Virginia Key Beach was the fruit of that bold, very courageous protest. that took place in 1945. It was a precursor of the Civil Rights era.